Let's talk about the first change that they've made to the contract, which is in the personal property section. They've added in thermostats, doorbells, television wall mounts, and television mounting hardware, mailbox keys, storm protection items, and hardware. Notably, they did not add in washer and dryer. So we have to continue adding in washer and dryer to the personal property section, like we do on every contract where there is a washer and dryer that's going to transfer. They did add in thermostats and doorbells. As you can imagine, a lot of homes now have Nest thermostats or smart thermostats and Ring doorbells and things like that. If you are the listing agent, you're going to have to check with your seller and see whether or not they have thought about whether they are going to take their thermostats with them. There are some homes that have 4 or 5 thermostats, maybe 2 doorbells. And when you get up into that range with these smart thermostats and doorbells, you could be talking over $1,000 that they've spent on these items. And maybe they anticipate that they're supposed to bring them with them, but the contract says that they're supposed to leave them now. So that's a conversation for listing agents to have with your sellers. You know, as always with personal property items, these things typically are not discovered until the walkthrough. So we do our inspection, we see everything that's at the house, the TVs are mounted on the wall, the thermostats are there, the doorbells are there. We go back for walkthrough and the thermostats, the doorbells, and the TV wall mounts are gone. Then that's going to create a dispute the day of or the day before closing, which is not something we want to have happen. So prior to the contract being executed, these are things from the buyer and the seller side that you guys need to be aware of so that you don't put yourselves in position to be in a dispute the day of closing over maybe a couple $100. What you're going to have to do now, if the seller is keeping these things, is you're going to have to exclude these items in section E. Okay, so section D is for items that are going to be included, and section E is for items that are going to be excluded. So if your seller is taking their TV wall mounts with them, you need to write that in the excluded items section. We've had a couple issues recently with mailbox keys. They've added this to this section too. Rule of thumb on any sort of keys, if the seller doesn't have them, best to disclose to the buyer that you don't have the mailbox keys or the pool key or whatever it is. If it is an association where you have to order a new key from the association, that's probably a seller responsibility, because at some point they had the key and they lost it, and the association's requiring that they transfer the key to the buyer. So rather than figuring out at walkthrough whether or not the seller has the keys that the buyer needs, it's best to figure that out before you guys even go under contract, or at some point during the course of the contract, so that the seller can be made aware that they have to actually get certain keys. Same thing with storm shutters and storm protection items. Shutters are no good if you don't have the key. I have listing agents contacting locksmiths for storm shutter keys, and that can be expensive because storm shutters are not just typical locks that you would find on a regular door. And so the seller needs to be made aware of that if they don't have the keys for the storm shutters. As always, things are negotiable. If you want to give a credit to the buyer and let them go do it, that's fine. But just be aware of all of these things and make sure they're taken care of so that you're not in dispute the day of closing.